So how do real estate commissions work? I get that question a lot, not only, quite frankly, from a lot of real estate agents, but consumers, home buyers, home sellers, and there always seems to be a little bit of confusion on how this works. How do real estate agents get paid? Well, the question I think is probably most important to try to answer first is, if you're a real estate agent, it's hard to say how much you would charge if you don't know how much it costs to sell the house, do you? And that's one of the things that quite frankly, a little bit disturbing to me about how a lot of real estate agents operate. They're quick, they kind of know, here's what I charge, and really without taking into account, well, what does it cost to provide the service you're providing? If you're a real estate agent, how do you know if you're making any money, and two, how much money? Could you be overcharging or undercharging? And just to have some set amount in your mind that you think that that you might want to charge, then I just think you're missing the boat. If you don't know what it costs to do what you're doing, then how do you know how much to charge for it? I guess that's what this video is about. And then if you're a potential home buyer or home seller, hopefully this will help you understand, how commissions work, and maybe some idea on whether you should be paying whatever it is you're paying, or what the agent is charging. Okay. So before I get into the meat, I need to kind of lay out a little disclaimer here. This video is in no way to suggest what anybody should or should not charge, how you charge. That's not the intent of this video. I'm just trying to lay out some ideas and hopefully create some understanding of how the real estate commission at least is supposed to work, okay? And there are disclosures required. So real quick, I believe we have to account, we being real estate agents, we have to be able to account for commission. That's a fiduciary duty that you owe to your client, right? So you're acting as a fiduciary when you enter in or create this agency relationship. Assuming you do create an agency relationship. And basically meaning, when I say create an agency relationship, that means that either the seller has hired me or some agent to represent them, and as long as they've been hired in writing as required in South Carolina, then that means that seller is my client. If the buyer hires me to represent them, then the buyer is my client. And as long as they're a client, then you owe them fiduciary duties. There are 6 fiduciary duties in all. I'm not going through all that. It's not the intent of this video. But one of those duties is accounting. And I just think commission should be a big part of it. If I'm a seller, if I'm going to agree to pay X amount of commission to my agent, not only do I want to know why I'm paying that amount, I want to know where's it go, how's this, what are you doing with this money, right? So, let's just sort of look at some things and see if this will help. Number one, how much does it cost to sell the house? I'm just telling you, if you can't answer that, and quite frankly, if I'm a home seller and you can't tell me as my agent, if you can't tell me what it costs you to sell it, then how do I know what's a fair commission, right? We know commissions are negotiable. And that's why I said earlier, this is no way to suggest what you should or shouldn't charge. Commissions are always negotiable and disclosed. Everybody should have an understanding of what we're doing here. In my mind, there should be full disclosure, which, by the way, is another fiduciary duty. All right, so how much does the house cost? How do we figure that out? Well, what I'm about to show you, obviously, is just an example, okay? This is not an all-inclusive situation here. But one, what services are you going to provide? And then what does that service cost, right? Just for example, if I list this house, I may want to pay, an appraiser or someone to come measure the house so I know and I have accurate, excuse me, I have accurate square footage. Maybe we'll do a whole nother video on square footage, but I'm telling you right now, if you're using the tax records, I think you're making a mistake. Okay, and I'm going to leave it at that. And I will tell you, if you happen to be the buyer or seller, and you're relying on the square footage that the agent provided, and they got it from the tax records, you could have a problem here. That's a whole nother video. But anyway, so I want to make sure we have accurate square footage, because obviously the value is based in large on square footage analysis. If you don't have accurate square footage, you're not going to have an accurate valuation. So, y'all, I'm just throwing up, these are complete samples or examples of what the services I might offer and the costs. I'm just kind of pulling out of the air. Hopefully they'll be kind of close. But if you're providing a service, you should know what you're paying for that service, and then obviously you plug that number into what we're doing here. I'm going to have a photographer come over and do some photos, have some professional photographs that I can put online. And in this example, let's say I have to pay $100 to the photographer, okay? I might decide to do an open house. How much will that cost me to do, to put together and whatnot? Y'all all involved. And again, I'm just making up a number here. Say it was $200 is what it's going to cost me. Y'all, please don't try to use these same numbers I've got for cost when you're doing this. If you decide to do something like this for yourself, y'all find out what it's actually going to cost and use those numbers, okay? I got advertising I've got to do, marketing, and I'm just throwing out a number here, say $400, and you'll see why these numbers matter here in a minute. So if they're not the number you might expect to pay, maybe too high or too low, y'all don't worry about it. You'll see where we're trying to go with this here in just a second. But then, we got to look at the co-op commission or the cooperative commission. Now, what are we talking about here? Typically, and again, this is not to suggest you should or should not do this. I'm just saying it's very common. The listing agent will also agree to pay the buyer's agent some amount of commission. That would be how the buyer typically gets compensated, or excuse me, the buyer's agent. That's how they might get compensated. Now, that's not how it has to work. There are all kind of options here. But what you do see a lot is the listing agent will share some portion of their commission to the buyer's agent. That's what we call cooperation. We cooperate with each other. So we call that a co-op fee. Now, as the listing agent, the one listing the house for sale, do I have to compensate the buyer's agent or even offer compensation? Not at all. I do not have to do that. And I suggest that be something the listing agent and the seller discuss. Seller, are you okay with us paying a portion or some amount of commission to the buyer's agent? Now, there's some other things you want to keep in mind here. Obviously, the first instinct might be, well, no, let the buyer pay their agent. Why should I have to pay for it if I'm the seller? There might be a few reasons. Again, it's all negotiable. But number one, you may not have that many buyers that can afford to buy the house, to qualify for a loan and pay potentially thousands of dollars in commission to their agent. They just may not be able to afford. In fact, and I'm going to tell you, that's going to be probably a large percentage of buyers. With the other costs associated with buying a house, they're not going to have the money to do it. Also, I will just tell you, depending on the financing that buyers can qualify for. For example, if it's a VA loan, by law, the buyer cannot pay the realtor or real estate commission. Okay? So that ain't gonna happen. So if you say we're not gonna offer any commission to the buyer's agent, you pretty much just did away with veterans buying your house, okay, if they're getting a VA loan. Because y'all, even if they can afford it, by law, they can't get a VA loan and pay real estate commissions, okay? So just be aware of that. So again, in this example, we're saying we're going to offer $7,000. Again, y'all, you may offer more, you may offer less. This is just an example, and you'll see why we're going through this here in just a second. But the buyer's agent is going to get $7,000. Oops. So if I add up these costs here, y'all assuming this is all I did or all I'm planning to do to sell this property, then I'm looking at a cost of $7,790. Okay? But now you notice, y'all, there's one more fee that I have not included yet. And that is, how much are you, if you're the listing agent, y'all, how much is the listing agent going to make? We know we're offering, in this example, we're offering $7,000 to the buyer's agent. How much will the listing agent get? Well, let's talk about that for a second. Obviously, it's negotiable. You can work that out any kind of way you want to work it out. Okay, so, but I'm just throwing up maybe for instance, y'all, just to give you something to consider or think about. And one of the things I like to do myself is, y'all, think about, y'all, how do most professionals charge for their services? Well, an attorney, for an example, I think most people would agree, attorneys are considered a professional profession. Well, how do most attorneys charge for their services? And I think you'll find it more times than not, they just charge by the hour. Y'all, depending on what I have to do and how long it takes, then that's what it's going to cost. So we charge by the hour. Y'all, now that's attorneys. Now I know this is a little bit unheard of for real estate agents, but just think about this for a second. What if you decided to charge for your services by the hour, per hour? How might something like that look? And that's what we're going to look at here. Now, number one, if you're the real estate agent and you decide you're going to charge by the hour, then y'all, the next question you got to answer, well, then what are you worth per hour? Y'all, what are you going to charge per hour? Y'all, that again is totally up to you. What is your services worth, right? You'll have to figure out that yourself. Now, I'm fixing to use some examples again, and it's in no way to suggest this is what you should charge, and it's certainly not suggest what you're worth. You may decide to charge more per hour. You may decide to charge less. So, y'all, let's take a look at this. Y'all, I'm kind of catching up on my slides here. So, y'all, this last question here. So, what are you worth per hour? Y'all, let's say, if you're going to do it this way, y'all, the next question we have to answer, how many hours do you typically work towards selling a particular listing that you've got? Again, the only way you're going to know that is to keep a record. Y'all track your time, and I think you'll find that it's usually pretty consistent, believe it or not, at least from my experience. But we'll talk about how we're going to figure that out here as we go through. So number of hours. So how long does it take to sell the house? Well, again, in this example, let's say the market suggests if I list this house, it's going to be on the market for 60 days. Okay, right? If you do your market analysis, you should have a good idea, assuming it's priced right. You've priced it according to the market. Then we're looking at about 60 days on the market. Y'all, again, in this example, it may be more, may be less, depending on your market. Now, what I find is, the first week, and when I say the first week, most of what you're doing in this week is actually getting the property listed and getting it on the market, getting your marketing and your advertising, getting all that stuff in place. And then, for the most part, once it's on the market, as the listing agent, there's just not a lot you're doing. if we're being honest. We're just waiting on a buyer, right? We're waiting to get some feedback from the market itself. Well, let's just say it takes me roughly 5 hours of work to get the property on the market, get all my marketing in place, get all my, get it measured, get the photo, all that stuff. So we're going to say that's 5 hours, okay? Well, then after it's on the market, how much time are you actually spending, say, throughout the week on just this property? Now, look, if I ask a real estate agent how many hours you working, I'm probably going to hear 40, 50, 60, 80 hours a week. Okay, well, look, you may be working long hours, but you're not spending all that time on this property, okay? So we're just talking about just this property. I'm not doing anything. I'm not counting any time except for what I'm doing here. So how many hours a week do you think you might work just, leading up until the buyer comes along? Well, let's just say for the next 3 weeks, the house is just sitting there on the market trying to attract the buyers. I'm estimating you're probably going to spend maybe 2 hours a week over the next 3 weeks, just doing odds and ends, replying, responding to different things. But again, and I know you're saying, well, no, I spend a lot more than 2 hours a week doing real estate. Okay, I know that, but you're only spending maybe a couple hours, if that, just doing something, working on this property. Y'all doing some more marketing, whatever. So over the next 3 weeks, that would be 6 hours. 2 hours per week. But then where you're going to see your time start adding up is when the buyer makes an offer. When you receive an offer, and certainly once the property goes under contract. Now you got a lot more going on here. We're kind of busy at this point. So here we're just estimating, 5 hours per week over the next 4 weeks, because typically once you go under contract, we got about a 30-day closing period here, maybe 45 in some cases, but basically, assuming we close in 30 days once the contract is ratified, we do 5 hours per week for the next 4 weeks. Now that's another 20 hours, right? So now we've got a total of 31 hours invested in this property. Now, how do you keep up with your hours? Like any other professional, you have to keep a time card or a time sheet. Keep it, and you're gonna see here in a second why this is so critical. So if you're claiming you did 2 hours a week or 5 hours a week or 10 hours a week, you should have that listed on like a time card. On this date, this is what I did, and I did it from this time to this time, which was a total of 1.3 hours, or something like that. So you got to keep a tally of the time you're actually spending. All right? And again, you're going to see why that's important here in a little bit. Well, again, in this example, let's say I'm going to charge $150 per hour for my services. Well, if I in fact spent 31 hours and $150 per hour, then I'm looking at a commission of $4,650. Again, in this example. Now, and again, make sure you keep that timesheet, because here's what I would recommend you do with it. And again, this is where the accounting, your fiduciary duty comes into play. Basically, what I'm telling you, seller, is this, or what I like to do. At least once a month, I always send a copy of my timesheet to the seller so they can see what I've done and how much time I spent doing it. To me, that's part of accounting. You have to account to your client, right? So now they can see in black and white, here's what they did, here's what my agent did, and how long it took or how much time they spent doing it. The other thing I do, when I send them that timesheet, If I told them I was going to pay somebody to come measure the house or somebody to come take the picture, whatever I told them I was going to do, I have a copy of the invoice where I paid for that, and I attach that to my timesheet. So every month, they can see exactly what I did and what I paid, and I send it to them. So now the seller knows exactly what the cost is, what you've incurred. And two, now the seller knows you actually did what you told them you were going to do, right? Because, if we're being honest, there are a lot of agents that talk about all the stuff they do and plan to do and going to do sitting down initially with the seller, and then for some reason they never get around to doing it. Again, this is accounting, right? You got to account for what you're doing and what you say you're going to do. So, if I'm the seller, I would be very appreciative to say once a month, at least, you could do it more often than that, but at least once a month, you'll get an up-to-date, here's where we are in terms of my number of hours, and attached are the invoices where I actually did and paid for the things I told you I was going to do, right? That's accounting. And I'm going to tell you, pretty much every time I do this with a seller myself, they all say the exact same thing. Frankie, I have sold several houses in the past. I've used other agents in the past. And this is the first time I've ever had any idea what the commission was for and what it was used for. I've never understood the commission. That's disclosure. Again, another fiduciary duty. You got to disclose this stuff, okay? However you want to do your commission, just make sure it's fully disclosed. Now we got to calculate the total commission. Remember the cost of services and the co-op commission to the buyer's agent was $77.90, right? And then the commission that I'm going to make, based on the examples we use, is $46.50. And then if you total all that up, the total commission due from the seller in this example would be $12,440. Okay? So, Frankie, are you saying just charge a flat fee, in this case, $12,440? Well, you could, right? But, if you just want to go with the percentage, which a lot of agents tend to do, I'll charge X percent, whatever. Then all you got to do is take that $12,000, the cost, $12,440, divided by the sales price. And let's say, for example, the home sold for $300,000. Well, if you take the cost, $12,440 divided by $300,000, that would make your commission at 4.1%, right? So that's how you calculate, or should be able to account for and fully disclose how commission works, right? Now, again, this is just something that I like. It doesn't mean you should do it, or certainly doesn't mean you have to do it. But one of the things I might tell the seller is this. Based on what I just told you, and I may have just, what you're looking at right now is what I'm showing to my seller. And I'll say, seller, what this means to you is this. The commission you will have to pay is 4.1%, okay? Or the 12.44, however you want to do that. It may be less. Do you think a seller would like to hear that? It could be less. At least they know what's the top they could potentially have to pay, but it could be less. And how could that happen? Because seller, I'm only going to charge you what it cost me to sell the house. We based all this example here on if it was basically took 60 days to get it closed, or 60 days on the market. Occasionally, the house may go under contract the day you list it, right? Then obviously that's going to cut out a lot of time. That's going to cut the hours, that you're going to have to work. So why wouldn't I do that? I mean, why wouldn't I save my client some money if I can? But now on the flip side, y'all, what if it took 90 days to close? And I based all my numbers on the 60 days. Now, obviously, you could tell the seller if it takes longer, then it may go higher than 4.1%. You also have to spend more time, more hours. The commission could go up. Y'all, as long as you disclose what you're doing, no problem. But I kind of like the idea, personally, I kind of like the idea that, if it takes longer than the 60 days, then you know what? My clock stops running at that point. So I like to just be able to tell the seller 4.1% or $12,440. That's going to be the top, the most you would potentially pay. Okay, but it may be less. Yeah, I just like that idea. Again, that's just my idea, and I'm not nothing about this video would suggest what you should do, and certainly not what you have to do. I just think you should at least provide and make sure you provide your fiduciary duties of full accounting and full disclosure. Okay? Y'all, hopefully that helps. Hope you have a great day. Shine for Jesus.